Welcome to today's 5 Good Minutes on Thanksgiving with Bryce Vaught.
There's a few things in life that I just really hate. One of those is mayonnaise. I cannot stand mayonnaise. I think it's disgusting. One year we were on a mission trip to Haiti, and it was a group of us. We were staying with a family for the week, and they were kind enough to prepare meals for us, and most of it was really good. But there was one night that they made chicken salad sandwiches, and it might as well have just been a mayonnaise sandwich. Our lead pastor, whenever he saw the sandwich, he knew I hated mayonnaise, and he thought to himself, he told me this later, he said, as soon as I saw that sandwich, I thought to myself that it was going to be a miracle if he could get this down. And by God's grace, I couldn't deny it. I knew it cost them a lot to make it, and I didn't want to reject it. I didn't want to be unkind, so I choked it down. But one thing I'm not going to be thankful for this year for Thanksgiving is mayonnaise. It wouldn't bother me at all if it didn't exist. And yet, I think there's a lot of things in life. That's a silly example, but there's a lot of things in life that we just really hate, that it wouldn't bother us if it didn't exist. You know, we can think of things as cancer, as war, as injustice, as all these different things exist. It's hard for us to be grateful for those experiences. And yet, the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 20, he says that we are to give thanks always and for everything. Always and for everything. And I read that, and on the surface, it just seems impossible. I mean, you might read that and think, well, doesn't the Apostle Paul know how difficult life is? And the answer is he does, better than a lot of people. We know that he suffered immensely as a disciple, as someone who traveled and preached Christ. He even confesses that he was rejected. He was hated by the Jewish people. He was hated by the Gentile people. He was put in prison multiple times. He was beaten. He was abandoned. He was rejected. He experienced starvation. He experienced many restless and sleepless nights. He went through shipwrecks and was on a deserted island and was constantly faced with suffering. And yet here the Apostle Paul instructs us that even in those things, we can express gratitude and thanksgiving. It doesn't necessarily mean that Paul is thankful for experiencing evil, but he is thankful for the goodness of God in the existence of evil. That no matter what he's going through, God remains good. When he writes to the Philippian church, he says in chapter 4, verse 8, he says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." And what he's communicating is there are things worthy to be thankful for, even in the midst of a lot of suffering. And this is significant because, again, this is written towards the end of the book of Philippians. And we know that the Apostle Paul, when he was writing Philippians, he was in prison. There was some uncertainty as to whether the Apostle Paul would even survive this experience. He thought there was a possibility that he might lose his life and be killed for his mission. And yet, he affirms that even in this circumstance, there are things that are good, that are true, that are right, that are worthy of praise, that are worthy to be thankful for. And it was this attitude that allowed the Apostle Paul to excel in faithfulness in the face of suffering. In fact, even though he's in prison, earlier in the book of Philippians, he makes this statement. He says, "I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ." In other words, in this moment when the Apostle Paul could have been filled with despair and hopelessness and anger for being imprisoned, he considered it an opportunity because he reminded himself that even in the face of opposition, God was with him, God provided good things, and God was there for him. And he was able to share the gospel. He was able to share the gospel with those who were watching him in prison. He says the whole imperial guard came to know and hear the testimony of Paul. And so what we can say is when the Apostle Paul says that we are to give thanks always and for everything, I know that this season for many may be very difficult, that you may be facing things that you never imagined. But even in the midst, no matter what you're facing, we can trust that God is still good and that we can remind ourselves of what is good and true, and we can express gratitude to God because he is for us and he is with us. And that's good news.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.